I'm Cadet Mounts, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to disassemble, assemble, and perform a functions check on the M4 carbine. So the first thing you're going to do when hitting a weapon is ensure that it's clear. So first you're going to check to make sure that the selector switch is on safe. Then you're going to proceed to clear the weapon. So first you're going to lock the bolt to the rear and examine the star chamber to ensure that there are no rounds within the chamber. Once you've done that, you will remove the magazine and ride the charging handle forward. Now we're ready to begin disassembling the weapon. So first we're going to remove these two pins. And now the weapon is separated into the upper and lower receiver. Next, what you're going to do is pull the charging handle to the rear, which will release the bolt carrier assembly, and then you're going to remove the charging handle. To disassemble the bolt carrier group, you are going to first remove this pin right here. It's called the firing pin retaining pin. If you use a pencil or a knife, it's the easiest way to get it to stick out so you can pull it out with your fingers. So this is the firing pin retaining pin. Next, you're going to simply turn the bolt carrier this way and allow the firing pin to fall out. Then you're going to push, this is the bolt, you're going to push the bolt inwards and it will turn a little bit. And you can see this pin here, you're going to rotate it so that it's parallel to this piece right there. And then you can pull that out. So this is the cam pin. And then finally you will pull the bolt out of the bolt carrier. Lastly, to remove the buffer spring from the lower receiver, you're going to push down on that silver button and pull the buffer spring out. And now the weapon is fully disassembled. So we have the upper receiver, the lower receiver, the bolt carrier, the charging handle, the buffer spring, the firing pin retaining pin, the firing pin, the bolt, and this pin, the cam pin. So now we're going to go into reassembly. So starting with the bolt carrier assembly. So now to reassemble, we're going to start by putting the bolt back into the bolt carrier. And if you look at these holes, one of them, so this one has some notches on either side and this side does not. So when you reinsert it, you're gonna look through this hole here so you can see if I spin it, you can see the holes. And you wanna line up the one that does not have notches. So this one has the little notches. So we're gonna line it up with this hole here. And then with it like that, you're gonna take the cam pin and insert it into that hole, just like that. Then pull the bolt and rotate the cam pin so that it is perpendicular to this top bar. Next, you're going to insert the firing pin into that hole in there. So to do that, you can kind of just insert it into the side and allow it to fall down in there. Lastly, you will reinsert the firing pin retaining pin into this hole. So if the assembly is this way, the hole's right here, and you will push that into the hole. We're gonna cut this. Wait, okay. So so lastly, you reinsert the firing pin retaining pin into this hole. And now the bolt carrier assembly is completely reassembled. And now the bolt carrier assembly is reassembled. Next, you're going to put the buffer spring back into the lower receiver. And put the charging handle. So you're going to set it over those grooves and lower it in. And then push it in just a little bit. And you want to make sure that the bolt is extended before trying to put it into the upper receiver. And you'll just push both of those in. Finally, you will reattach the upper receiver to the lower receiver with the 2 pins and close the dust cover. So now that we have reassembled the weapon, we are going to perform a functions check to ensure that we did everything correctly. So to start, you're going to pull the charging handle to the rear and charge the weapon. With the selector switch on safe, you're going to attempt to pull the trigger and you shouldn't hear any clicking. So the weapon is functioning properly on safe. Now you're going to move the selector switch to semi and pull the trigger without releasing it, and it clicks. So now you're going to pull the charging handle to the rear and charge the weapon again, and as you release the trigger, it should click. So it clicked. Now you're going to move the selector switch to auto and attempt to pull the trigger, and it should click. And then you're going to charge the weapon again and release the trigger, and it should not click. And then you're going to charge the weapon again and return it to safe, and the weapon is functioning properly.
Hi everyone, I'm Cadet Krieger. I'm going to be going over the M249, and so when you first get a weapon, you want to clear it. So we're going to ride the bolt to the rear, put it on safe, bring the charging handle forward, and we're going to look away and lift up, wait a second, hopefully nothing pops out at us, and we're going to sweep, and now we are clear. So we can visually examine, see if there's any bolts still in there. See anything. All right, we're good. So now we are good for disassembly. All right, so now that we've cleared the weapon, we can start to disassemble. So the charging handle is forward, the bolt is forward. So we're going to start with the buttstock. And there are 2 pins here, and neither of these pins fully come off the weapon. They stay still attached. So we have the buttstock and the trigger mechanism. So you may notice I'm not going behind the weapon because there is the drive spring, which is still in the weapon, and it could become dislodged and shoot back at me. You don't want that to happen. And so now you have the drive spring and the drive spring mechanism rod. And now we need to get the bolt carrier, the bolt, and the gas operating rod. We're going to use the charging handle to just bring those right out. And we will separate this into 3 parts. To do this, there's a little pin. Again, this one does not come detached, but it allows you to detach the gas operating rod from the bolt carrier. And to get the bolt out of the bolt carrier, there's a little notch, and you just pull this back, and it comes apart. Simple enough. All right. Next, we're going to take off the barrel. And on this weapon, there's a little lever right here. And all you have to do is push that and hit the barrel forward. Last part, which is arguably one of the harder parts, is the bipod and the gas tube. And so this can be a little temperamental. You have to twist it, and it comes off, and then you are able to take the bipod off. And so now we have fully disassembled the M249. So now we are ready to reassemble the M249. We'll take the receiver, bipod, and the gas tube, and we're going to work in the reverse order that we disassembled. Now, something that people tend to forget is that you have to put the bipod on before putting the gas tube in, otherwise you cannot put the bipod back on. And again, this is one of the harder parts for people. There we go. And then it'll click, and now you know it's locked in place. We will put the barrel back on, and you have to, again, use that lever to allow it to reattach. Now the barrel's on. You want to reattach the bolt to the bolt carrier just by putting it into that little groove that I talked about earlier. And to reattach the bolt carrier to the gas operating rod, you have to get that pin out again. Now it's locked in place. So for this, you want to make sure the charging handle is all the way forward. And there are little notches in the weapon, and you want to make sure that the bolt carrier and the bolt follow that line, and it should just slide all the way down. You'll then take your drive spring mechanism rod and the drive spring, reattach them to each other, and feed this through. And again, once you put this in, you want to stay out of its way just in case it becomes dislodged and flies back at you. And now we're going to put the trigger mechanism and the buttstock back on. And this part's a little hard too, just because you have two pieces and you got to try and put this pin back in. There we go. And one more pin on the top of the buttstock. And now the weapon is fully reassembled and we are ready for a functions check. So a functions check, we'll start by riding the bolt back, putting the weapon on safe. We're going to maintain control of the charging handle and proceed to try and fire, but because it's on safe, the bolt should not ride forward, which is good. We're going to switch it back to fire and guide the bolt forward and close the dust cover. And now the weapon is ready for shooting.
Ready for shooting.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cadet Barnes. I'll be going over clearing, disassembling, and reassembling, as well as a functions check for the 240 Bravo machine gun. So, to clear the weapon, you want to bring the charging handle to the rear and put it on safe. This will prevent it from sliding forward. So, from here, you want to look away and pop the cover, sweep down, sweep away any rounds that would be there. Now you can look at the weapon. The reason you look away is so if anything discharges out, you don't lose an eye. So you double check. If you're up here, put your finger right there by the barrel and make sure that there's no rounds inside the chamber. So we can see here the weapon is in fact clear. You can go ahead and set that down. So now we can get on to disassembling the weapon. Well, first of all, actually, you want to go ahead and ride the bolt forward. So now you're confirmed the weapon is clear. So now the bolt's forward. Go ahead and start disassembling. So first things, you want to get off the pin that retrains the trigger assembly. Put that in its spot. And then trigger assembly simply falls out. There's then a little, like a lever right there. At the bottom of the stock, you just pinch that in and pull it up, and it pops right out. I'll put that in its place in a second. So this guy can go ahead and bust out. From here, look on over inside, you can see there's this little spring essentially. I'm going to push that forward and lift up. And so now it's not being held in place. You then pull the charging handle back, and this whole mechanism pops out. So here we have the bolt and operating assembly right here, as well as the driver spring assembly. So this is already disassembled, right there. And I don't believe it, yeah, we don't do anything else with this one. So the bolt and operating assembly is already disassembled and ready to go. From here, we'll go ahead and pop off the feed tray. That'll pop right out. Where is this?
Feet.
There it is. Cover. Yeah. You can then remove the cover. So we're not going to take off the sights right now. So this is good to go. Then also the feed tray pops out as well once that pin is removed. So I can go right there. Next we'll go over the heat guard. It is very easy to pop off. It just basically slides across. You can take off the lower guard handle as well, but we won't be doing that. I don't know when you would. So next is taking off the barrel itself. So to do this, here, there's a lever right here. And so you squeeze that lever in with your thumb, you push this guy up, and then pop it forward, and it comes off nice and easy. You'll notice there is a lever actually on here. Don't worry with that lever. That simply allows us to move for carrying purposes without actually detaching from the weapon. So if you try to pull that lever and move it up and then try to wrench it off, you're gonna break something. So just don't worry about that lever. So now the weapon is disassembled. So now that we've disassembled, we can go over reassembling the weapon system. So we're going to start with where we just go in reverse order. So here we have the barrel. And make sure everything's up vertical and in place. Slides right in, slide it down. You'll hear a few, I guess like sort of like clicking. Then go over the handguard, upper handguard, pop it in, and then you want to line it up with the two holes that are here, and then pop it in. So this one's really old, but it's in. We'll then go over the feed tray cover and the feed tray. So it's up on my legs, so it's flat. Feed tray cover goes right in its little two little grooves in between the rail here. Feed tray goes right on there as well. Just yet. Then we take the cover pin. There we go. Alright, so now the feed tray is reassembled with the feed tray cover. We'll move over to the bolt and operating assembly. So for this, we want to make sure that the bolt is forward. And it just slides on in like that. I'm going to keep it out so I can then just slide in the jar spring assembly as well. So now that all goes in, and again, just like we did when we assembled it, the jar spring assembly is going to go. So that's secured in there, and then go back to the buttstock. You want to make sure that the lever is facing down. Slide her in like that, hear a little click. Trigger assembly. So for here you can see it's got a little mouth, like a little lip that I used earlier to wedge off. And that needs to fit in. My butt sucks. This fits into a little lip in there. And so it's already fairly tight in there, but then you just slide in the last trigger assembly pin. there we go. And so we'll go ahead and reattach the. So now she's fully reassembled. Next we'll go over the functions check to make sure we didn't mess anything up. The functions check of a 240 is really simple. So similar to when we cleared it, you want to lock the bolt to the rear by pulling it back and putting it on safe. And then want to maintain positive control of the charging handle, because if the safety is not working, you want to make sure you don't dry fire. So we pull the trigger, it's not firing, which is what we want. That's good, that means the safety is functioning. So now we pop it back onto fire, squeeze the trigger, and that releases the bolt, and you just ride the bolt forward, and we now know that she's functioning properly.
So now I'm going to demonstrate what you'll do if you're firing and your weapon malfunctions. So let's pretend that I'm on a qualification range and I'm engaging targets as they pop up, and then I pull the trigger and my weapon does not fire. I'm going to attempt to put the weapon on safe. It won't go to safe. So now I'm going to conduct sports. So S, slap the magazine. Then P is pull. I'm going to pull the charging handle to the rear. O is observe, so I observed a round eject from my weapon. Then I'm going to release, R, and then tap the forward assist, which is this button right here. You're going to tap that a few times, and then you're going to try to shoot the last S. Okay, so now I'm going to run through that a little bit faster. So I'm engaging targets, I pull the trigger, it clicks but it doesn't fire. I'm going to attempt to put it on safe. It doesn't go to safe. I'm going to slap the magazine, pull the charging handle to the rear, observe the round fall out, release, tap the forward assist, and try to shoot again. So that is sports. Alright, so now I'm going to cover remedial action if sports does not work. So I'm engaging targets, I pull the trigger, nothing happens. So I'm going to attempt to put the weapon on safe, it went on safe. I'm going to pull the charging handle to the rear and observe, and I can see that I have a double feed. So now I need to go into remedial action. So first I'm going to, again, try to put the weapon on safe. It's already on safe. I'm going to lock the charging handle to the rear with this button on the side. Then I'm going to remove the magazine. I'm going to make sure that the stoppage is clear. Then I'm going to reinsert the magazine, charge the weapon. Put it on semi, and attempt to engage targets again.
Good.